There has been another shooting, this time in Las Vegas. We're getting just scant evidence right now of just how much shooting was going on here. We do know that the suspected shooter has been, quoting police officials, located and is now deceased. We don't know the number of victims, only that there are multiple victims. This is an active investigation. This occurred just about an hour ago, almost exactly an hour ago. The first reports of shots being fired at Beam Hall, the home of the Lee Business School at the University of Las Vegas here. We don't know much more than that. We do know that eerily this is about 3 miles from the site of perhaps one of the worst mass shootings in world history, the 2017 mass shooting at the Route 91 Harvest Musical Festival. 58 people were killed in that one. Hundreds more were wounded. This does not look anything like that, and we pray it doesn't even approach that. But it occurs a little more than a month after the attack in Lewiston, Maine, a two-pronged attack that ended up taking 18 lives. Let's go, for the time being, to Jonathan Hunt with the very latest, what he's learning and what we can say about these casualties and what they're finding out. Jonathan.
Neil, it was almost exactly 1 hour ago, just about 3:04 East Coast time, 12:04 locally in the Pacific time zone, that we got first word from the Las Vegas Metro Police Department that there was an active shooter on the campus of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, which is obviously in the heart of the city of Vegas, just a couple of blocks or so behind the MGM Grand and just off the Strip. What the police said was that there was an active shooter and there were, quote, multiple victims. The university itself then sent out alerts via its own internal system, warning students to run, hide, fight in all caps. Run if they can, hide if they can, fight if they have to. That terrible warning that we see so often to so many students on so many campuses and at so many grade schools, unfortunately, over the last few years. But within about 30 minutes, Neil, we then got word from the police in Las Vegas that the shooter had been located and, quote, is deceased. What we do not know from police at this point is whether the suspect was killed in a shootout with police officers, whether he was killed in some sort of shootout with any armed security that might be on the campus of UNLV, or whether he perhaps killed himself. We're waiting to get those details. We would expect, given that the situation is, in the words of the Vegas Police Department, now contained, we would expect that we would soon hear from them in some sort of press conference, Neil. What we do not know also at this point is how many victims there were. They have only told us multiple victims. We do not know the condition of those victims, whether there are minor injuries, serious injuries, or whether at worst, Neil, there are fatalities in this shooting. But we do know the one piece of good news we have from police so far, that the shooter was located and is dead, according to the Las Vegas Police Department. We've heard from several students coming to cameras in the immediate aftermath of getting out of the scene, Neil, saying that they were absolutely terrified. They heard shots. In some cases, they saw bullet holes in windows, and they are talking about having been evacuated from both Beam Hall, which, as you said, is the home of the Lee Business School, and also from the Student Union. Those two buildings are next to each other on the campus of UNLV, Neil. So in the early going here, it's always difficult to be sure of the exact location of the shooting. That is information we will also get from UNLV. The campus, by the way, is just slightly north of Las Vegas Airport, and we understand, Neil, that there was indeed a ground stop on all aircraft there at the airport. We assume that that is being lifted gradually now, and that air traffic will be beginning to move again. As you look at the map on your screen right there, just to the bottom left there is where the airport is, and if you go directly to the left. In other words, a couple of blocks to the west, that is where you hit the Strip, the MGM Grand right on the corner there. So this really is in the heart of the city of Las Vegas, Neil, and a terrible situation for a city so scarred by the awful shooting you mentioned at the Mandalay Bay just 6 years ago. 58 people killed in that shooting, as you mentioned, Neil. But what we understand from police, the headlines again, Neil, the suspect is dead. There are multiple victims. We do not know the condition of those victims at this point, Neil.
You know, Jonathan, do we know the shooter's connection to the school? Why he was there? This was the business school, after all. This Beam Hall is the home of the Lee Business School. Did he have any connection to that school?
Police have given us nothing on that so far. We would expect to get details on any potential connections in an upcoming news conference, Neil, but at the moment they are saying nothing about the identity or the potential motives of this shooter. And the witnesses we have heard from, the students coming off of the campus there, none of them have said anything about seeing the shooter, him or herself, so we don't know anything, to be perfectly blunt, Neil, about the shooter or the shooter's motives at this point, Neil.
One other question. You mentioned a single shooter. So are they talking about the possibility of others, or whether this individual was acting alone?
Well, it's interesting, Neil. They've only said that the suspect, singular, was located and is dead. Now, they used very much the singular, but then we heard reports from on campus that police were still active. We got the alert again from the University of Las Vegas that it was an active situation and asking students to continue to shelter in place. So certainly there appeared to be ongoing police activity, but we have heard nothing official about there being more than one shooter. And again, the only thing we have from the police department is a reference to a singular suspect, and that singular suspect being dead, Neil.
Jonathan Hunt, thank you so much, my friend. We will impress upon you for updates. Great job on this. We're trying to piece this together.